Welcome to Love and Speak the Truth, a podcast with Sister B and friends. It might get messy, sacred to secular. Don't judge. All voices will be heard here. So listen up. We're going to explore the human experience through the lens of wisdom sharing and faith, with a worldview that might shock you, move you, even downright inspire you. Today, I welcome my sister and friend, Sister Cecilia O'Dwyer. Cecilia has dedicated her life to justice and an openness to listening and including the voices of others. She is one of the most embracing and inclusive persons I've ever met. She is filled with passion to serve, learn, and work for systemic change in the world, where dominant voices oppress and dismiss the underserved and underrepresented. Her creativity and her dedicated desire to work for justice in hope for our human family and the planet makes her a real beacon as a Mary Ward woman. Well, welcome, Cecilia. It's so good to see you. I am so excited that you're here all the way from Madrid. And I've been looking forward to our conversation for a long time. I know you're a busy person, so we're going to get into this conversation and share a little bit of our lives. And hopefully those listening in will find meaning in our words and in our metaphors and so on. So welcome, Cecilia. Let us begin. Why don't you start by maybe just telling us a little bit about you, about your life, about what you've been involved in, other than, anything goes.
Well, first of all, Brenda, thank you very much for inviting me to be with you and to have this conversation. I'm really excited about it, to be quite honest. It's and what you're trying to do is very beautiful. That idea of love and speak the truth. It's just a beautiful concept. I was living in New York for a few years. And when I returned, I think one of the first things I began to do was to kind of see how we could move forward with issues that I had been working on some years previously. And part of that would have been the whole area of justice, peace, integrity of creation, which I am passionate about. And actually kind of started that process here in Spain right at the beginning of the 2000s. But anyway, I had been working representing our NGO at the United Nations, and I had some fantastic young women in there as youth representatives. And while I was there, I kind of realized, that this would be something that would be very good for Spain. So I got that going here, and we had excellent young women trying to work and to get young Spanish people interested in these big issues of our day, and very much in connection with what is happening at the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Goals and that whole world, and the big issues there. So I got that going, and it was very. It's been exciting. Yeah, it's
So
been exciting.
I just
Enjoy
want
it.
to back up just a little bit for you to just tell us a little bit about the beginning of your time in the United Nations, how long you were in the United Nations, why you were there, maybe just a little taste of that, and what perhaps if you could come to your greatest learning in the United Nations. And I just also want to ask you how this Irish woman has lived your entire life in Spain, the Spanish province. Maybe just a little backup with that, and then get into that mission to go worldwide.
Okay. I actually joined Loreto in Spain. Well, you know from my accent that I am Irish, right? Irish. But anyway, I always had a sense of adventure. And Ireland wasn't, I think it wasn't big enough for me. So I wanted to travel. When I was at college studying music for a while. And then I went to France and I went on to Spain. And I decided to join Loreto in Spain. So that's been my base for a long, long time now. And it's been, it, I think I loved it. One thing is, feeling this calling to give your life to God. And another thing is in this exotic place that I found myself in. So I said, this is just the right thing for me. So anyway, I started off there, and I have been very fortunate and very blessed, really, that very often I was in the right place at the right time.
Mm.
I was actually asked to go to the United Nations to take up our office there. We actually uh, got the NGO going at the United Nations in about the year 2002, just when our North American branch and Irish branch had united. So that was a kind of a big project. Let's be present at the United Nations. A number of religious congregations actually were doing it at the time because we were seeing the need to be present, at that level where these decisions were being made, and to have a voice for, on the one hand, an ethical voice, and then on the other hand, a voice that really cares about the most vulnerable people in our world, and to try to keep that before the diplomats and before the United Nations world. So anyway, I was asked to take up that uh, post there in 2013, and I was there for almost 7 years altogether. It was a fascinating experience, learning experience for me, because being part of the whole NGO world there was one really in many ways cohesive kind of world, in that a whole lot of us of our NGOs that worked along the same lines, had the same interests, same concerns. We worked together on different issues, and then we had very good relationships with the UN staff, uh, um, to kind of help along. And then, naturally, it's the diplomats representing the different countries who really, are the people who run that. That's the United Nations, as you know, it's the countries that run the United Nations. So then we would meet with diplomats and work on issues, and just to try to have our voice heard. And I was very happy there. And I always think that the UN is actually they're trying to do, the best they can for the world, even though it's not appreciated and often not heard. But I mean, that's my experience there.
I think I'd love to hear something about how that translated in your own life, in your personal life, in your ministerial life, perhaps. It's something to think about the programs and what is happening in our ministries as we try to make a difference in the world. That those are very important things. But the personal transformation that happens there when we are immersed in ministries that engage with the world, that are heavily involved in making inroads in making life better for people who are underserved, underrepresented. Uh, how did that work there and your work in JPIC, which you explained earlier in your introduction? How did that change you personally in the way you live your life?
Um, yeah, I think my uh, inner world or inner life, my whole spiritual world, as I matured, it's become more and more um, connected with or interlinked. My spiritual world and what I do, it's one that comes out of the other. Do you understand
Mhm.
what I'm saying there? Um, and as I have worked on justice and peace and at the United Nations, at the same time, my theology, my spirituality, I was nurturing that the whole time. It's so very simple in that, basic to our spirituality, which is Ignatian, we have this saying that, we seek and find God in all things and all in God.
Mhm.
And I think, as I began to realize, you know, the divine, God, sacred, it's all in everything, and that divine energy that is urging me along, So that is, for me over time, um, I've grown into that, and in a very uh, kind of happy place about how I see the divine and try to see the divine in everything, and even in these awful situations that we have, at the moment. Sometimes I hear my saying, that God is in all of that, or that divine energy is there.
Mhm.
Mm-mm.
Um, Too many times, I find myself getting um, immersed in the things that I can't do, or the feelings of hopelessness. Um, do you have any reaction or any sense that what happens in the UN and what happens in real life government and how that works with our ministerial call to serve and to find God in these things? Do you ask yourself a question? Where is God and where am I in this conversation?
Yes. And where are we humans? I think I think what I'm learning more and more is that it's about us humans, and I look at ourselves as human family, and how wonderful we can be and how terrible we can be.
Mm.
Um, I think what I'm more and more aware of, and then there is another um, aspect that I've become more and more aware of as well. But it struck me really when I was at the last Parliament of World Religions, and I was listening to this little group. They're actually it's a Palestinian Israeli little NGO, and it has the three religions in it. And there they were trying to work together. Now, this was before everything blew up. But I said to myself, this is just so beautiful what they're trying to do. And it taught me a lesson. And it was that um, the, um, they said, like, that each party there said, we live, we have our own reading of history, and we have no connection with the other, you know? So what they were trying to do was to listen to each other and to the different, their different stories of history, the way they tell history. They were trying to listen to each other and to learn from each other, so that they could actually try to understand each other, So I think that's deep down, and this can be kind of a learning, I think, and this is where I would see divine energy coming in, is when you're trying to listen to the other side that is so difficult to listen to,
Mhm.
you know? Um, and if you try to do it, and the people who try to do it, I think that when we do that, that is something that's really worthwhile. Mm.
Yes, I think you touched on something great there, especially uh, connecting us to spirituality. The word, the action, the idea, the concept of listening, deep listening. I think a lot of us think that it's easy to listen. There's the difference between listening and hearing, isn't it? Um, that listening posture. Mm.
That is so true, Brenda. And as you say that, I'm just so aware of what we ourselves are trying to do internationally. because we're inviting ourselves to listen, to that deep listening so often. And I think it's a wonderful um, exercise. It's a wonderful way of being human, and 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 at the same time as we're trying to do that, others are trying to do it as well. So this is what I was hearing, these groups saying, um, um, yeah, that they're trying to do the same kind of thing. And it is very important for us, if we want to try to be full human beings, I think, even, and try to respect and to try to understand the other who's so different.
Yes, I agree with that completely. What we're trying to do and what we've been modeling, I think, as religious women in the world, even before we realize it, is that we can live together as human beings and from different parts of the world, from different languages and understandings. We can share what we have, and that makes each one of us better, more loving people. That's the model of community life. And I don't mean living together. I mean, um, hoping together, working together, listening to each other, being in relationship, being in right relationship is the thing that I think a community life model helps for us. That I think the UN models that in government. I think the Pope has been trying to invite us to that engagement of synodal listening and participation, isn't it? It's bringing us together with our differences and saying, I hear you, I'm listening, I'm hoping somehow, isn't it? We see it growing.
Yes, and it's delightful, to kind of be able to experience what is happening, and how in that way I think we're trying to grow as human family. You mentioned, yeah,
Mhm,
it's what we're trying to do in these different places, and now with the synodality, and that, I mean, that is such a huge challenge for our church, and sometimes, like when I think of it, when you were talking before about, I won't call it despairing. It's not despairing, but it is. You say, "Oh my God, this is going to be so difficult," and especially for all these men. It really is. It really is difficult. But anyway, at least I say to myself, if they try it, if they keep on trying, and if this, I think, which is beginning, with time, let's hope it will take us to a different space, I think.
mhm. Yes, yes. So, Cecilia, maybe if we just take a little pivot here for a second, and maybe you could share something of what would you say to either church leaders or government leaders now that could influence how we see each other as human beings, recognizing the vulnerabilities in different communities and cultures. Those we used to categorize first, second, and third world. Um, but what would you say to leaders today to sort of bring home the fact that we need to find ways to be more human, more humane, more conscious that we are all God's creation?
Well, it definitely has something to do with listening, you know. Um, I just ask myself how many, are aware that we're all God's creation, or even think in those terms. And this would be a kind of my struggle, even to see ourselves as part of one human family, not to mention that we're part of this planet, and of all of creation, to get ourselves there. Um, that will need a lot of, I think, reflection,
Mhm.
and I think quiet time, and deep listening. You were not encouraged to kind of stop and reflect.
Mhm.
In general, I know more and more people are doing it and see the need for quiet time and to get away from all the noise and to be able to build themselves up spiritually. They may not speak of it in terms of, in religious terms, but there's something there about being strong within and trying to recognize who we are. But I remember, I think it was in the 90s, the big questions for the 21st century are going to be, who is God and who are we humans on this planet and what are we doing about it?
Mm.
That's what they were saying back then. And I remember at that stage, I was not particularly aware. I know other people must have been very much more aware to be able to actually express it that way. But I remember that I wasn't at that stage. But now, 30 years on, like, yeah, I've been a very different place. And just as I've it kind of changed and moved over time, so do other people in different ways, And I think there's such a lot about giving ourselves the time to think and to ask ourselves those big questions.
It's true. Yes, yes. The big questions of humanity today, I think, is one of the things that I had hoped, or I hope to help us to listen to each other. There's so many people on podcasts now, and I think the biggest gift of this platform is to sit for 40 minutes or 30 minutes or 45 minutes and listen to points of view and learn how to reflect on those points of view and listen to one another as we wrestle with the issues of our time. And I think that that's the goal of our having our conversation, is to be able to listen in a deeper and more meaningful way to history, to experience, and to one or two people having a conversation about meaningful topics.
Mm.
What about you right now? As far as your work, your ministry, your life, I'm sure you're still involved with the UN. I'm sure you're still working on those development goals. You're never going to stop doing that, right?
That's
And
part of it.
you are on the ground, mobilizing for justice and peace and integrity of creation. You're communicating. Uh, how does that all come together in your life right now?
It's amazing, but it does. It's fascinating because everything's so interconnected, Uh, and I think that's the big discovery of recent years. That we've realized that everything is interconnected. So in that respect, yeah, I'm doing a whole lot of different things, and a lot of it is online. You know, so I'll just kind of, for example, I'm actually on the province leadership team, and as you know, we are. Our institute, we're joining with our sister institute, the Congregation of Jesus. And then both of us are here in Spain. We have communities. So we're doing a lovely process together of getting to know each other and working together. And then on a very local level, my local parish, um, they have a tiny ecological conversion group, right? It's my way of participating in the parish. It's all based on Laudato Si, on the encyclical Laudato Si and the whole platform and all of that. But that has been like I see that as kind of it's linked with the other tasks that I'm doing as well. But it's nice to do it in that other little uh, arena, which is quite different. And then uh, another group that I work with quite a lot. It's called the Institute of Cultural Affairs, and it's an international group, but the Spanish part of it is very small. But that group also has a United Nations little body there. Um, it's important for me to keep in there in the not only ecumenical but in the interreligious world. But I've met some amazing and beautiful people from different religions, and we've worked together uh, over time. And that experience is something that I think it is so enriching, and I want to to keep that up. Um, as long as I can, and just see, like how we're all moving together from our different religions, because this is something else that's happening. Because just recently, I was just so delighted to see. Well, we Catholics have the Laudato Si, uh, that whole kind of understanding ourselves as part of creation, and then recently the Muslims have made their whole kind of statement on how they understand themselves in connection with creation. And I was saying, this is so lovely when you see this happening, and you see the religions, trying to move on together, because we're usually so aware of all the differences and the way we fight with each other, But in actual fact, you have this whole other movement going on, which is just so beautiful. And I like to be kind of in there as much as I can. There is a group, actually. That's another thing, that at the United Nations, the, a number of people there were very aware that within the religions, you know the religions will more or less follow what their leaders say, but they will not listen to the United Nations. The practitioners. So like they would say, we just have to get the religious leaders on board, which is what they have been doing for quite some time now.
Mm.
And some very beautiful work has been done, and you've something growing there. But that's, you don't hear so much about that. We
No.
only hear about the other part of it. So I think the positive part of what's happening in our world, in so many ways, that I see it in myself, that I have to try to kind of keep talking about it, keep talking about the good things that are happening, and try to communicate, with the social media and that as much as I can.
That's where we get the hope, isn't it, Cecilia? Is we
Yes,
keep we
yes,
keep
yes.
at it. We keep working
Mm,
together to come together
yes,
and let
yeah.
divisions go
Mm,
and
mm,
let the community aspect go. I think
yes.
religious congregations and religious life has been um, has been modeling that for a number of years, and I think I can only speak for the U.S. What we've been seeing in recent years, in the last decade at least, is that we have to move together in understanding. Even if our charisms are different, we need to move together because we're
Mm,
diminishing. But in that diminishment, we still have something to offer. And I hear that, I resonate with what you've just said. In coming together, it gives the world hope. A seed is planted and it will grow if we keep up with the watering of it.
yeah, yeah. That is just so important, Brenda, because like as you're speaking there, the ways we're doing it, because just another group has come to mind, and it's actually uh, of the religious, the Catholic religious congregations, and it's a justice coalition. Uh, yeah, with a religious coalition for justice, and like that's doing wonderful work in its own way for the religious communities there. I was very aware of that. And then all these other little initiatives, like that I see, for example, now there's this group, Stop Ecocides,
Mm.
which it kind of took off. It took off just a few years ago, and I just became aware of it when we had the first meeting here in Spain. And it's to kind of stop ecocides, and help our planet. And that's another group, you know, they're doing their bit. And then when I look at what our local, I mentioned the parish, but then even the diocese, you know, they're getting themselves going and trying to get the people, trying to help the people to be more aware, because awareness is a huge part of it, you know, of where we can go.
Ecocide is the killing of the environment.
The environment, yes, yes. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to make ecocide one of the crimes of the, you know, the international crime belonging to the Rome Treaty. You know, like you have genocide, and you have, you know, war crimes and all of that, crimes against humanity. So they're trying to include ecocide as one of those crimes. And I think an interesting part of that would be is that, you know, it can be either countries, or it could be big industry, you know, if they actually destroy, you know, the environment, they can be brought before the International Criminal Court.
Mm.
About that.
Yes, interesting.
Well, that's what they're trying to get to, you know. So, and yeah, but anyway, it is creating a huge awareness, you know, and it begins by you know, getting into local authority, then national parliaments, and then trying to work its way around to get it eventually into, you know, the United Nations and some kind of treaty or whatever they'll try to do with it.
Yes,
But it would get into the criminal part, though.
right. Cecilia, do you feel, and I'm not sure where I stand on this. I'm a little jaded by my own behavior in terms of what I am aware of and not aware of. But do you feel that awareness changes behavior?
Well, I think it's a first step, you know, it's a first step, but then we have to make choices
Hmm.
to change behavior, you know.
Hmm.
I think that's another part of it.
Yes.
And I may be very aware of a whole lot of things, but uh, yeah, and I suppose it's the level of awareness that may drive me to change maybe my own behavior.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. Yes. It's also wrapped up in that idea of being in a deeper relationship, so that we have to have some skin in the game, some ways that we see how that awareness touches our lives and touches the people we care about,
Mm,
or touches our way of seeing the world. And then at a deeper level, the awareness might in some ways sink in. I think of going back to some of the civil rights movements, that people came closer together, having had experiences that changed them, right? Maybe that's the whole um, change that needs to happen when we look at things like immigration in this country.
mm,
And anyway, that's another aside. But well, thank you
mm,
for that insight on coming together, and that example of ecocide. I've not heard of that
mm.
in any recent reading that I've done, at least expressed in that way. Well, let's see if we could come around to wrapping up. And I have my final question that I generally slip into all the people who come on the show. So get ready for it. The name of the podcast, Love and Speak the Truth. What is your one truth, your one personal truth that you've lived by in your life or you've come to in your life? And it's just a phrase or a word or some understanding. What is your one truth?
Mm. The thing, and it has to do with truth, and it is about searching for truth. And because uh, over time, um, I've realized that as everything changes, I have to keep searching. you cannot say the truth, because it's very difficult to talk about the truth, but it's something about searching for truth. And I think over time I've that's what I have been trying to do, and to have a kind of clarity about who I am, who God is for me, that the whole sacred dimension of life, the meaning of that, and yeah, I've been searching. Um, it's not so much to find answers, I suppose to find a way, because everything changes and everything is in evolution, So then, yeah, and I have to keep right on until the end of my life. It's something that doesn't stop. At one point in my life, I would think, that there is dead truth and things are static, but now it's not like that, and it's trying to discover and trying to find my way.
May I summarize that a little bit if I heard you correctly?
Mhm. Mm.
Would you say this phrase encapsulates the seeker of the way or seeker of truth?
Something like that, yes. Yeah, and it's I mean it's central to my life actually,
Being a
and it's
seeker.
fascinating. I find myself amazed, with the kind of how that has developed over time, and the people I have to be thankful for who kind of helped me on the way, the wonderful people around me, in the institute to begin with, and then and then other people that I came across and opportunities that I was given and all of that, and somehow they were all helping me along,
Mhm.
to where I am today. It's like in the scripture where like uh, yeah, it's I carried you on eagle's wings to where you are today, that type of, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Well, Cecilia, thank you so much for this conversation. We sort of took different ways at getting to this image of being a seeker, not of the truth, but seeker on the way to truth, perhaps.
Mhm, mhm.
And just want to thank you so much for being a part of this conversation and being a part of this journey to add our voices to the conversations out there that uh, invite people to listen to our truth. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
this.
Yeah,
Yes.
and thank you, Brenda. It has been a pleasure for me to be with you.
Okay. God bless you and thanks so much.
God bless. God
Bye.
bless. Yeah.
And now for the wrap up. You have just had a human experience from a spiritual being. We have so much to learn. So go forth to love and speak the truth. Ad majorem Dei gloriam. A couple of announcements. Don't forget to rate and follow us on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We are on Facebook at Love Speak Truth, and visit our website at www.lovespeaktruth.org. For a few credits, when all is said and done, I give thanks and credit for sponsors, producers, and contributors who made this podcast possible. Mega shout out to IBVM Region Leadership, Megan Butel, Jennifer Schmitz, Carol Benaziak, Laurenti Wright for the keyboard music, the late Sister Maria Beer IBVM for her composition of the music Women Bearing Witness. It takes a village, folks. Thanks for listening to Love Speak Truth.